We're here with Deroy Murdock. He's with National Review and he's a Fox News contributor. We're not showing his face right now because he doesn't do visual. He has a contract that permits that, but we'll hear his voice and his ideas, which is what are important. We wanted to ask you about climate change, and my first question is, can the government control the climate?
No, the climate controls itself. I'll give you a small example. You've got a nice cold day, the sun comes out, and very often gets warmer. That's not government action, that's the sun. There's some excellent research on, I don't call it climate change, we used to call it weather, now it's called climate change. I call it, quote, so-called, quote-unquote, global warming, that's the term I use. A woman named Sally Ballunas, I think it's Balliunas. She's at Harvard, and I believe she has a joint appointment with, I believe it's the Goddard Space Center, if I remember correctly. And she's done research looking at ice cores and tree rings and all that, and she's been able to calculate what the temperatures were going back to about the year 1000, more or less. And then she's also been able to get measurements of what the solar radiation was. And she puts these on a chart, and guess what? The lines are like railroad tracks. They track each other almost perfectly. And what that tells me is that
what is it that tracks exactly? Because I missed it.
The numbers going up and down in terms of temperature, and the numbers going up and down in terms of solar radiation.
Right.
Almost
so
run parallel, which tells
excellent point.
Yeah, which says to me that what's controlling temperature on Earth is not the internal combustion engine or coal or somebody's water heater; it's the sun.
Yeah,
so if you have a problem with so-called global warming, take it up with the sun.
Right. So yes, I agree with it. All the scientific research says that the sunspot activity, i.e., temperature on the surface of the sun, is the controlling element of temperature here on Earth. And so no matter what we do, that's going to be the determinant factor, because that controls really the temperature.
That's right, correct.
And I've also heard that the wobble of the Earth, since the Earth is on an axle and that wobble changes, that also can affect the temperature.
That would make sense, because in the summertime versus the wintertime, a big part of the change in temperature, which we see every year, has to do with the position of the Earth relative to the sun, in terms of that tilt you described. And so perhaps if it tilts a little bit more one year and a little bit less the next year, that very likely will have an impact on whether it's a warm winter, a mild winter, freezing cold winter,
right.
boiling summer, mild summer, whatever that might be.
I think the scientific reason is that when it's more tilted, then you get more of the sun rays spread out throughout the year. Therefore, it doesn't get as cold on the polar caps. But if it's not as tilted, it tends to get very cold in the polar caps, and then that reduces the average temperature of the world.
Yeah.
But it might be fine and dandy in the tropics.
Well, what's amazing about this is, as you're describing, so many of these policies that Obama imposed on us, and if God forbid Hillary Clinton won, would be getting pushed down our throats right now. I don't think they're going to have much impact, because things totally outside our control, like sunspots, have such a tremendous guiding impact on solar rate, on the temperatures on Earth, and so on, number one. And number two, the kind of policies that Obama wanted to implement, this clean power plan, it would have cost, these numbers are not from Rush Limbaugh or Ann Coulter. These numbers are from the Energy Information Administration at the U.S. Department of Energy under Obama. These are Obama's numbers. The cost in terms of reduced GDP, I believe the number was about $980 billion, so almost $1 trillion between 2015 and I think 2040. So almost $1 trillion sucked out of the economy. Now, if you think global warming is a problem and the Clean Power Plan could have reduced average temperatures by 1, 2, 3 degrees, then it's a lot of money we're losing, but this is going to be a significant impact on this problem. The actual reduction in temperature, 2/100ths of a degree. This is like taking a thermometer and turning it from 72 degrees all the way down to 71.98. So the basic idea is shut down the economy and then not do anything about the same global warming problem you're trying to fix.
Excellent point, Deroy.
So even from their perspective, this wouldn't have done a damn thing.
Yeah, so that's something that people don't understand, and we try to ask them. If we had stayed in that Paris Accord, all this money is going to be spent, and then in 15 years or 20 years or whatever, we get, like you said, 0.02 a change or 0.20% of a change. So
It's actually 0.02.
0.02.
Yeah,
okay.
0.2 would be better, but it's 0.02. Yeah, amazing.
0.02. I agree. And so when you compare how much money we have to spend compared to what the actual effect's going to be on the temperature, doesn't make any sense.
Not at all. Not at all. Breathe the amount of plankton in the oceans. Plankton suck up CO2. That also helps. Another thing you can do is put in your local building code. If you build a new building, you've got to paint the roof white. The white will help bounce the radiation back up into outer space. So those are three things you can do, none of which would lead to the economy coming to a screeching halt, which is what Obama was trying to do and what Hillary Clinton would be busy doing right now if, God forbid, she'd been elected.
Right, excellent point. And we are right now in an interglacial period, headed towards the glacier period. So if it starts to get colder, we're going to have to burn more coal to keep us warm. Because
that's right. Yeah, exactly.
In other words, what's really approaching is cooling of the Earth, not actually global warming.
Yes.
And I think that's also missed. People don't realize that the climate of the Earth changes. It has some more or less within a certain thousands of years.
That's correct. I mean, we had the little ice age when we were really nice and cold, and then we had a period where it warmed up. And Greenland is in part is called Greenland because it used to be green. Well, was that because the internal combustion engine? Oh, it hadn't been invented yet. You had warming when the dinosaurs were running around. They weren't exactly running air conditioners and ceiling fans. So there's a lot of hubris on the left that the belief that everything on the Earth is something we can control. We're passengers on this thing that's spinning around and flying through space, and we humans don't have the capacity to control everything around here as much as we'd like to think we can.
And the government much less.
And the government even less so. That's it. Very good.
So I wanted to say, you mentioned the plants, and if they were able to reduce carbon dioxide, what would happen to the plant life? Well, if you reduce all the carbon dioxide,
that's a good point.
What happens to the plants?
Well, it's sort of
they're going to die.
CO2 happens. The plants love CO2. So
yeah, they need it.
And
they need it to live.
Off. Exactly.
So we don't want that either. And
no,
most people
want the plants to be happy.
Right, because they produce the oxygen that we
it.
need. So
we're
happy, they're happy.
That's it.
We give them the carbon dioxide,
yes.
We'll take the oxygen.
It's a nice symbiosis.
It's a good symbiosis. So this big increase in carbon dioxide that everybody's complaining about, you happen to know the amount because I have the figure right in my head. 10 or 15 years ago, or 20, however you want to go back, of whatever they're talking about, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was 0.0003. Now it's 0.0004.
How about that?
So that was the big thing that we're all talking about, and they
yeah.
say that there's too much carbon dioxide. Well, I mean, it's a trace gas.
No, this is like taking a shot of tequila and pouring it into an Olympic swimming pool and saying everybody got to get out because you're going to get drunk.
Exactly.
I mean, it's absurd. It really is. To me, it's the biggest hoax on the planet, and it's amazing how much energy and time and money have been wasted chasing this ridiculous, absurd theory around, and all the damage that was done for 8 years, the damage done in West Virginia to your state and to coal miners and other people, based on complete hoax. It really is the hoax of the century, maybe the hoax of 2 centuries.
A hoax designed to intimidate people to, I think, get more control over their lives, because it's socialism through the back door, right?
That is correct. Yes.
So you're not going to do socialism directly, but I'm going to control how you use your energy, and that's controlling your life, and that way the government has control over the people through the back door.
That's right. There's a term, watermelon, which is green on the outside and red on the inside. And that describes, unfortunately, way too many people involved in the environmental movement. And some of them sincerely may want to save the planet. A lot of them, unfortunately, see this as, you say, a backdoor mechanism to control people. And if you can tell people, okay, you can only use this much energy, and you have to drive this car, and you can only use this kind of dishwasher, and you've got to close down that company, and you can't go and drill there, you're basically controlling people.
And we're going to give subsidies to this company and the other company, so all these subsidies are going to drain us from using capital where we should.
That's
You know,
it, exactly.
Deroy,
Okay.
it was a pleasure talking to you about climate change and the truth about it, and I'm going to borrow your term, watermelon. I like that.
Very good. Good to see you. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.